Hello, Simon Croom here from the University of San Diego. In this tutorial, I want to focus on course design for online study, and in particular focusing on the notion of curating content. I think it's important to recognize that undergraduate and especially graduate students learn very differently from children. We talk about andragogy, and I may come on to that in a later session. But here are some of the key characteristics of adult learners. They like to have control over their own learning. They have a high motivation to learn, but are very pragmatic. In other words, what's in it for me? How does this help me? The learning itself may be secondary to the qualification. It may be secondary to acquiring a specific skill set or solving a particular problem. One of the challenges is that, and I'm sure we'll encounter that as we transition to online, is that there is a lot more resistance to change. Children are more malleable in their learning styles. Adults are kind of embedded. Having said that, adult learners are far more diverse as a body. They draw on their past experience, and the learning is often self-initiated. The student will get off their butt and take the steps to learn a particular topic or theme, or even just engage with the material you provide. So let's think about what our role is. In curating learning, what we really mean is that instructional design is about providing a learning journey. And I think as a side note here, it's important to think about where the word curriculum comes from and what it refers to. Curriculum is not just the syllabus. Think of every learning action that helps your students to meet their learning objectives. And the word curriculum actually comes from the Latin for curare, and initially referred to how gladiators trained for chariot races in the circus of the Colosseum and beyond. So you also must be thinking beyond what happens when you're present in any learning environment, whether it's online or on ground. What should the students be doing? Why should they be doing it? How are they going to develop their understanding? You need to walk through that experience for the learners. And just to add a little bit of complexity to the issue, frequently we think that people learn by seeing, hearing, doing. But in fact, Howard Gardner, way back in the early 80s, really in his seminal work about the theory of multiple intelligence, noticed that, and really developed this theory of multiple intelligence, depending on the individual and depending on the topic or the context. Individuals have more than just one intelligence. They have more than one way of developing their intelligence. There's a logical, mathematical. How do we make sense of? So, for example, I play guitar very badly, but for me, I have to understand the theory. I have to understand the intervals. I have to understand the logic of it. I'm not a great visual learner. I can't watch somebody play and follow it. I need to think about it logically. Now, I'm a visual learner when it comes to doing tasks in terms of work on my house, doing any repairs or remodeling. Musical, I mean, it sounds as though musical intelligence would only relate to music, but it doesn't. It can relate to some development of physical kinesthetic abilities. Rhythm can have a really important role to play. How we read out loud to somebody, one of the things I suggest to students is that, get up, walk around, read out loud. And if you want, try and read a song. Think about how children learn through nursery rhymes and songs. There's the intrapersonal and the interpersonal, how we learn ourselves and how we learn in collaboration with others. Clearly, kinesthetic is learning by doing, getting your hands on, taking the material, working with the material, how to sculpt and so forth. There's kind of a naturalistic intelligence, very much related to how we engage with the living world around us. And finally, linguistic intelligence, kind of self-explanatory, but the role that language plays. Do we understand terms? How do we articulate? So keep this in mind when you're thinking about curating the materials and curating the learning experience for your students. There are multiple ways in which students learn, and you need to address not just the diversity of student learners, but the diversity of learning that you're trying to guide. So curating, here's a great example, the Apple Store. Apple clearly here are curating a whole range of experiences for their customers, sitting down at the Genius Bar, interacting with individuals, touching the products, looking at the products, listening to the products, understanding how the products work. So a lot of service experiences are curated using the notion of multiple intelligences. So when we come to an online course, what are we going to do? Well, we've got opportunities to use the material that may already be in place to support the textbooks that you've recommended as a required reading. So students in the sciences, students in business, students in many disciplines, in fact, will be using online publisher materials to work through. So integrate that maybe far more than you have done in the past. YouTube, phenomenal. I mean, you're watching this via YouTube, but YouTube has a mass of resources. You don't need to invent things yourself. Somebody's already gone out there and done it. Nothing wrong with textbooks. Give people guided reading. You know, just because we're using online mediated learning doesn't mean it all has to be on the computer. Getting the students to collaborate in an online environment using Skype, using Zoom, using FaceTime, using any other of the many conferencing facilities. So group work can be facilitated online. So pulling it all together, do not try to use every media. It's great to experiment with something new for yourself, but just stick with what you know already. Maybe explore how YouTube tutorials could help. You don't have to make everything yourself. Not every learning object or exhibit needs to be developed by you, so you don't have to spend hours and hours recording video lectures. YouTube, textbook online resources, screencasts, very powerful. Definitely mix up the media. Students will get bored if they're just exposed to one type of media. Don't overload the students just because you've found some really exciting things. And this is going to be the challenge actually. Just because you're excited by the media, you have to ask the question, how is it helping my students? What are they going to do? And give them options. Not everybody wants to sit and watch videos. Some students definitely want to, given what we've said about multiple intelligences, definitely want to sit down and read and highlight and so forth. So give students options, multiple routes through a topic. We can use discussion boards to engage the students. Certainly any academic publications that you've got that you think are relevant, any academic publications of your own, plus the seminal works in the area. Thinking about setting homework that comes with either the textbook or homework that has been developed elsewhere. Again, online classrooms using Zoom. And finally, don't forget the power of office hours or counselling online. I found that students really do benefit from and engage far more with online office hours than they do with face-to-face office hours. Can schedule it, they don't have to physically come to the office, and they're far more helpful. You can be far more helpful to them. So remember what the focus is. It's on the learner. How will they progress through the material? Are there any checks on their learning? There should be. Self-assessed questions, TMAs, tutor marked assessments, discussions, and quizzes. And where will you interject? You don't have to be the person who's in the classroom 24/7 responding to every post. Let the students stimulate the discussions. It helps if you've got some reports from your learning management system just to see how people are progressing and to make sure that they've actually logged in. So you can actually keep eyes on your student learning. I wanted to just briefly mention an experience we've used for over 10 years now at the University of San Diego, and I know many of my colleagues elsewhere have used, and that's a platform called Curator. And here's just a couple of insights to Curator. The first screen on the top left is really the student screen. Each object is curated, so you'll see each of those red circles relates to a specific object. In some cases it's a video, in some cases it's a blog post, it's an online resource, it may be a download a toolkit and so forth. And in the bottom right hand side, really powerful, is actually the dashboard, so that as an instructor I can see how well the students are doing, get an understanding of intensity of learning and the quality of learning. If anybody wants to know more about Curator, note the spelling, please Google it or contact me. So in summary, one, you don't have to build everything yourself. We don't need to be sitting down doing thousands of Zoom recordings. There's a wealth of online resources. May already be an online study site for your textbook. Not everybody adopts that. Map the journey for the learner, but always, always, always think about the learner experience. Put yourself in the shoes of the learner and enjoy.